Before you start this job, you want to keep in mind that after you're done, you're going to need to go to a local garage and have the vehicle aligned to avoid premature tire wear. We're going to remove the wheel. We're going to use a 19mm socket. Take the wheel off. There's 2 bolts at the bottom of the front shocks. Take those bolts out. I'm going to use a 13mm socket. Pull that bolt out. All right, pull that out. We're going to take off the lower sway bar link nut. I'm going to use a 15mm socket and a 5mm hex bit. Loosen this up. And I'll switch to a ratchet wrench to make it easier. And remove that nut. Now I want to separate the link and just slide it out. And that should stay there. That's good. This is a little rusty, so I'm just going to spray that down with a little rust penetrant. Let that soak for a little bit. I'm going to remove this lower ball joint nut. I'm going to use a 13/16 wrench. You might be able to use a 21mm wrench as well. Loosen this up. Or you can use a socket as well. All right, take that off. Now I'm going to separate that lower ball joint with a pickle fork. There's other tools you can use that actually press down on the stud. There we go. All right, that's separated. Because this lower control arm is going to swing down, I want to disconnect the wire for the ABS sensor, or the wheel speed sensor. Disconnect that. And when this swings down, we can disconnect the wire from the control arm. Okay, on this side of the bolt, I'm going to use an 18mm wrench. And where the nut is, I'm going to use a 21mm socket. Loosen this up. Take that nut off. Use a 13/16 or a 21mm wrench right here. And I'll use an 18mm wrench right here. And we'll loosen this up. And I'll just switch to a ratchet. Just be careful, watch your head. This is going to slide down. Take a trim tool, remove these wire ties that hold down the ABS wire. Gonna try pushing it up from underneath. Just use a hammer, tap it. And there we go, pulled it out. There you go, just set that aside. Now I'm gonna pull the bolts out of the lower control arm where the bushings are. Slide the front one out. Now I'm going to use a punch on the back one. Before we take this back bolt out, we need to turn the steering wheel all the way to the right so that the rack is not in our way. All right, now we can slide this bolt to right there. Right, now you don't have to remove the outer tie rod end. You can just grab the whole knuckle assembly, twist it forward, and slide the bolt out. Just like that. And grab the control arm and slide it out. And just line the new control arm up. And slide it in position. Take a dead blow hammer, just hammer it into position. Just get that back bolt started. And get the front bushing lined up and slide that bolt through. You might need a use a pick to get this to line up, or you could use a screwdriver. Right there. Once you get the bolt started, you can take a socket and a ratchet and try to screw it in. All right, something you want to keep in mind when you're putting the bolts back in, there should be an area where you can see where the old bolt was. These bolt holes on the frame side are actually slotted. That's for an alignment adjustment. You don't have to get it exactly where it was. You're gonna have to go get an alignment done after you're done anyway. But if you get it close, then it's gonna help out. All right, now I'm gonna move the steering wheel back so that the wheels are going straight. Now install the wiring harness for the ABS sensor. And keep this out of the way. And put the lower control arm nuts on. Now if you see the front here, the bolt is way forward from where it was. So I'm just gonna tap the control arm just to get it back in position. And this nut as well. I'm just going to tighten these up a little bit. I'm going to use a 13mm wrench on the nut right here, 18mm socket on the bolt. I just want to tighten these up a little bit. I can't torque them yet. I need to put the weight of the vehicle on the suspension before we tighten these down completely. But for now, just get it close. And I'll do the same with the back one. Get the lower ball joint lined up. That lined up, I'm going to get a screw jack underneath here. Push the control arm up. And put the nut on. All right, to hold the stud, I'm going to use a 10mm wrench. I'm going to use a 13/16 wrench to tighten the nut. If you had a ratchet wrench, that would be ideal. And just tighten this up. All right, at the point where this is snugged up. Now I'm going to use a torque wrench and torque this nut to 30 foot-pounds. And then with an angle meter, you're going to want to go another 120 degrees. If you don't have an angle meter, do the best you can. Now we can plug the wheel speed sensor in. Get this sway-bar link lined up. Actually, I'll lower the screw jack and then line this sway-bar link up. Slide that wire onto the sway-bar link. Install the nut for the sway-bar link. Use a ratchet wrench. When the stud starts to spin, use the 5mm hex bit and tighten it up. And tighten that nut to 37 foot-pounds. Now we install these lower shock bolts. Just line those up on both sides. Tighten these down. And torque those bolts to 18 foot-pounds. That's good. So I'm going to use a screw jack. I'm going to raise up on the lower suspension underneath the control arm. I'm going to hold the bolt with a wrench and torque the nut to 100 foot-pounds. Good. Then we'll do the same with the front one. Right, now I can lower the screw jack, or the pull jack. All right, reinstall the tire. Line that up. Install the lug nuts. Now I'm going to use a torque wrench, tighten the lug nuts up to 100 foot-pounds in a star pattern so that it tightens the wheel down evenly. go around again, just double check.